7 rules that we have seen create over $150 million in revenue just in the last 12 to 18 months. Hey, welcome back to the Amazing Freedom Podcast. We're going to be talking about some of the latest in our brand development for this year and on our path towards the $10 million challenge still, and maybe update a little bit on that. Then we're also going to go through 7 rules that we have seen create over $150 million in revenue just in the last 12 to 18 months as part of our Amazon seller tribe. If you've been following us, you've heard that our actual 8th round of coaching is currently open. We have had hundreds of people go through this coaching, and it is bar none the best coaching that we've ever seen in the Amazon seller space for helping people get from a newer level seller to, that kind of people that are stuck at that $10, $20, $30,000 a month level to the $1 million status. There's really nothing else like it out there. So the 8th round of coaching, if you're listening to this right after we released it, that's open until August 15th of this year. If you missed that, make sure you get on the wait list to see future rounds. But these 7 rules are something that we've seen really play out as kind of principles in the Amazon seller tribe for Amazon specifically. And I think, again, just a really good framework to operate by if you are trying to hit that $1 million status or beyond. Before we get into those 7 rules, Andy, I just wanted to get a little bit of an update. I think we've missed this maybe the last couple weeks of being on the podcast, just talking about what's been going on in our business. I actually had an early call today, a 7 a.m. call, which is early for me. Normally I'm still wrangling my kids around. Last night was a hectic night. My one-year-old son is running around, slips on the wood floor with his socks, and boom, smacks his face, and his teeth are blood's everywhere. I'm like, that's kind of like my typical day lately with the 3 little ones, 6 and under now. But so this morning was early. We actually had an employee on our team who's out and a different time zone, and they got up early too. And so just really exciting to get some product development going on. So this call was with a US manufacturer of ours, which is something we've talked about a lot on the show, that we're really excited about the future of USA manufacturing. I think it's something that more sellers should be looking at. Every time you hear potential conflicts with China and all that, it just makes you think, hey, US manufacturing might be a way, something to look at more. We obviously still import most of our goods from overseas. But this US manufacturing, what's really cool working with the US manufacturer, if you can find a good kind of partner manufacturer, is this morning actually kind of roadmapped out with this manufacturer the next couple quarters of product development, right? And that's not something that we kind of typically do with our manufacturers. Well, I take that back. We have been doing a lot more of that this year, Andy. I would say even with our Chinese suppliers, we've been doing some really good product development that really won't be seen until Q1, Q2 of 2023. So I take that back. We have been doing stuff, but it's more about that's more iterations on our current products. With this call I had this morning, we're kind of talking about brand new niches, stuff that we can work our way towards. So I'm really amped up about that. That was kind of a cool start to the morning, because we talk about this all the time. There's so many things you can do, but just finding new products to sell on Amazon is probably the most important. But I will say this before I ask kind of what's new with you, Andy. I was talking to the supplier, and he helped us. We're working out some operating efficiencies with him that our VP of Ops has been meeting weekly with him and working out. And there's some operating and shipping efficiencies that we're going to work out hopefully next year that could add to our bottom line. So this is not just sales, but profit could add potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars of profit to our bottom line through operating and shipping and a couple different efficiencies. So when you reach a certain level, obviously in the beginning, you're just trying to sell. It's like any business, right? You just need revenue. You just need to sell. You move quick, you get stuff on the marketplace, your margin's hopefully decent, but you just want to start selling and kind of a proof of concept that the product's going to work. But over time, to keep growing and be competitive in the marketplace, you have to kind of dial in those efficiencies. And I feel like we're going to do that a lot over the next year with our brand, which is really exciting because we could almost not grow our sales a whole lot, even though we plan to do that. But even if they don't, I'm hoping that these operating efficiencies alone could increase our margins and therefore our profits for next year. So that's kind of my morning the last week. I'm amped up about that. Andy, I know you've been going into the warehouse a lot more lately to kind of, again, improve our operating efficiencies here at our own place. And just give us an update. What else is going on with you, and what do you see kind of in the business that's exciting lately?
Yeah, for sure. One of the things we've really been working hard on over the last 2 months is product development on the current products that we have. And so we've been making a number of changes that customers really over the last couple of years have been requesting. But because we've been so busy on the hamster wheel operating the business, we haven't really given enough time or devoted enough time to make these changes that we probably should have a few years ago. So thankfully, the team now is at a level where we've been able to, over the last couple of months, make some major improvements on some of our best-selling products that hopefully are going to lead to more sales, to better conversion, to better reviews on Amazon. And so, that's one thing that we always say is like, don't ever stop improving your product, because at the end of the day, your brand is really, especially on Amazon, it hinges on those reviews. And so there's really two things that you have to do. You got to find a product that people want, and then you have to make a quality product. And so if you're able to deliver on those two things, and you're able to make a better quality product than what's on Amazon, then you are going to have really good sales, and that's going to allow you to compete on that Amazon sales channel. So we're excited about these changes. We think the customers that we currently have and new customers are going to really appreciate them.
Talk to us a little bit about, you've been going into the warehouse more. We had an interview with Paul and Jill Miller, who sell 4 million or so they did last year, right? And they talked to us about how they operated mostly out of their basement until just up to recently. So a lot of, you talk about all the time, like the packing, the taping boxes. We kind of got away from that a little bit, just I think the busyness of life and different events going on. But you've been doing that more lately. What's that like? Like, are you back in there and you're like, oh man, this is just so much hard work, like kind of the grind, or is it like not been that bad from like just like an overview level of kind of seeing what's going on day to day?
Yeah, no, I think it's always helpful to have boots on the ground where the product is coming in. So it's really allowed me over the last few months to catch things that probably a lot of times, again, like those guys in the warehouse are so busy, they're prepping, they're packing, they're shipping, they're putting labels on some of the products we have, they have to rework. And so they don't necessarily have a big picture of the company as well as the brand. And so just being in there, I'm able to catch things that they're probably too busy, right? Or too tired to catch, because when you're working in the warehouse every day, it's physical. And so, you physically just get tired. So that's been really good. And I think we've made a commitment. I'm going to be going in there now a few days a week for the foreseeable future, just because some of those things that I've been able to catch, and hopefully I'll continue to catch more, there's small incremental changes that could have really long-term lasting effect, right? So, I think our brand now is kind of at that level. I don't know how you want to quantify it, where we're like at 90%, right? And so now we just have to make, we got to try to edge out those 10% changes. How can we get to 100? And sometimes it's as simple as like we're putting labels on a box. And, so my suggestion was, instead of putting them on the top where the customer opens it up and it kind of leads to a less quality unboxing experience, let's put the labels on the side of the box. And so when they open it up from the top, it's a lot cleaner look. And so because we're concerned, like we want our customers to have a really good unboxing experience. Well, if I wasn't in the warehouse kind of watching them, and participating, I may not have caught that. So that's some of the cool things I think that happen when you are in the area where that product is coming in and where you see it going out.
Yeah. And I have to imagine that anybody listening to this who either has always used a 3PL from like a private label standpoint, importing, or you used to get it sent to you and then you switched to a 3PL, which I think is like a natural progression of most sellers, is like, you don't want to be doing it either yourself, right? Because that's not the best use of your time, or just the messiness of having, or you just scale up and it's not physically possible. Or from arbitrage, even a lot of people move from kind of like a home-based model to they start having their employees start doing stuff and maybe they're not seeing it every day. It is just seeing how that customer experience and how things is happening. And when it does come to unboxing, like we've made changes with our packaging, we've made changes with the product itself. And if you're not getting like a sample or a new unit sent to you every time because you're not right there, I just think like you can miss a lot of those little things. Like you gave a really good example with the labeling. So yeah, just an encouragement. If you do fully use like a 3PL or you're not seeing your product a lot, make sure that you're somehow getting touch points on your product, whether that means that there's every time there's like a new container coming in, they're sending you a sample basically, so you can kind of have like the ongoing quality check, or you're physically going and visiting your products. Everybody's situation is different, but I think that's worth mentioning. It's been helpful. So, okay, let's talk about the 7 rules that we've seen result in, hundreds of millions of dollars of sales through the Amazon Seller Tribe, over hundreds of people. We talk about this all the time, but we have 130 members in the Amazon Seller Tribe who are $1 million sellers, which still, we say it every time because every time I hear it, it sounds a little far-fetched, but that's how many $1 million sellers we have there. So I like to keep repeating it. And we kind of see this tribe principles that that most members start to take on. And I think it's resulted in it. So Andy, let's run through these 7, kind of break down what they mean to you. And I think the first one of the 7 rules is sometimes when it comes to selling on Amazon, you just have to let it go. Gonna make me think of my Frozen days when I was selling thousands of dollars of Frozen dolls, that Let It Go song, but you have to let it go sometimes. What does that mean to you when it comes to Amazon principles?
Sure. In sports terms, if you've heard a quarterback, right, that maybe makes an interception, a basketball player that, takes a shot and misses it, what you want to have is you want to have a short memory for those failures. Because if you dwell on them, they very likely can lead you to more failures. And so when it comes to business, when it comes to selling on Amazon, right, a lot of times we're in an inventory-based business. And so you have to make inventory purchases that, hopefully you're buying low and that you're going to sell for higher, right? So you're going to have that margin. Well, at times you are going to make mistakes. Nate, I know that you've made mistakes. I've made mistakes. We've made mistakes together. And sometimes those mistakes can be extremely painful. And if you don't let that go, it will really cause you to hesitate, right, in the future when those potential buys come before you. And so the business we're in, really life, right, is risky. So you just got to kind of know that. You got to be okay with it. That life is risky, business is risky. I'll tell you how risky life is. Life is so risky that one day you are going to die. You're not going to make it, until you're 150, right? Business is the same way. When you make those wrong purchasing decisions, and I'll keep it at that because, again, we're in an inventory-based business, you have to be able to wash it away and not allow that bad decision to potentially affect when you see another opportunity come along. Because if you do that, you're never going to grow.
I'll give one just example. I've talked about it before, but my very first product that I ever tried to import from China back in 2015 was a very, in hindsight, stupid like bath pillow product that was junk. And I imported it. And before I actually even received that, I placed an deposit on my second product. So I was pretty aggressive, in hindsight, really. Most people probably wouldn't do that. And I don't know if I'd recommend doing that your first time. And so I placed that deposit, and then I got the bath pill and I realized like it wasn't a great product. It wasn't selling well. And so I had already placed the deposit though on my second one. And in hindsight, it was good that I had, because I probably would have been gun shy, but I had to just let it go. The first bad product, and that second product had issues later that I've talked about, but it was a success overall, where it really got me to like see the potential of private label. And I think I got under like a 5,000 BSR in home and kitchen for like 2 months in a row for that second product that I brought in. So it ended up having problems later that resulted in my garage being full of them that I've talked about before. But at first, I saw I started to believe in the concept of it all. So I had to let it go. And sometimes you just have to let go a bad buy or a bad decision, like you talked about. All right. Number 2 is, so first is you have to let it go. Number 2 is you have to ignore them. And a lot of times that's talking about the doubters, the haters, whatever you want to call it. So talk to us about what that's meant for you selling online.
Yeah, so it really depends on where you're at in life. For me, 10 years ago, I was not an entrepreneur, never had my own business, had always worked for a corporation or a company. And so when I started to share like, hey, look, I'm thinking about going full time selling on Amazon, a lot of people looked at me like sideways, right? And the biggest question you always get asked, well, what about health insurance? And that's probably the number one concern, right? That folks who are working for a company or corporation, when you tell them, hey, you're going to begin your own business, what about health insurance? And so, for me, right, and for you, if you're listening to this, and if you haven't gone full time, like a lot of our sellers in the Amazon Seller Tribe who have gone through our Tribe 8 coaching, which again, Nate shared at the beginning, it is open right now. We only open it 2 times a year. It's going to close August 15th, and then we will not open it again for another 6 months. So if you're interested in selling on Amazon, you need to go check that out. Well, for those folks, right, that were in my head at that time, I really had to ignore them. I had to kind of put them out because I had a vision. I saw what other people were doing in the Amazon seller space, and I was willing to take that risk. Now, had I listened to them, I would never be at the level of success where I am right now financially. And I would probably still be working for the man, earning a paycheck. And there is no way I would have the same money that I currently have, right, in my bank account, as well as, the business that we have together humming along at the level that it's at. And so there is a sense where you have to ignore people when it comes to that, as well as you have to ignore people as when you are in your business. There will come times. Here's the thing. If you want to be successful in life, there will be times people are going to think that you're crazy. Think about Steve Jobs. How many times people told him he was crazy, right? Genius drops out of college, or, Bill Gates, genius drops out of college. There were times people probably told him, hey, look, you are stupid for dropping out of college. Well, you know what? When you get that passion and that desire, you are going to have to ignore those voices, right, that are telling you, hey, this is a bad decision. You got to really believe in what you're doing.
Well, at the risk of sounding a little crazy, the system, quote unquote system, is really set up in a lot of ways. You mentioned health insurance. Think about really health insurance, 401ks, school debt. All of that stuff is set up from a macro level, and it really just keeps most people like in fear and tied to, I can't lose my health insurance. I can't lose my 401k match. I can't, I got this $200,000 of student loan debt I have to, take care of now that I've done that. And it's really designed to lock you in so that you can't escape from that corporate world. It's very difficult to, right? And so, one of the triggers for you was that you had this really big retirement benefit that was going to be worth, I think, $1.5 million. You've said in the past, I got taken away from you. But if they would have kept that there for you, Andy, you probably never would have left, right? You probably would have been too afraid.
Been in the Matrix.
Yeah, you would. Yeah, the Matrix. Yeah, you would have been stuck there. And so, you had that forcibly removed from you, but most people don't, I think, and so they get stuck and they're too afraid to make that step. And same thing for me. The previous job I left, thankfully I didn't have a lot of benefits. It sounds stupid now, but I didn't. So I didn't even have that kind of pull on me yet. And I was newly married. I didn't have my kid yet. So again, all those things are hard once you do that. But my employer still looked at me like I was crazy. Like, you're going to sell on Amazon. Again, it was like, you're going to sell on eBay, sell out of your garage. Sounds crazy. But the last 2 years I've made 10 times more profit than I can honestly say I would have made even at a decently high paying job, because I was able to do that.
Well, just think about, when you were back early in your early days, you were buying all that Disney Frozen merchandise, right? If you would have shared that with some of your friends or family, they would have probably said, you are crazy. What are you doing spending $10,000 and $15,000 on Frozen dolls, right? You have to ignore them.
Yeah. I've never really thought about it that way, but looking back, thankfully, I started with all my own money. So I didn't, borrow it from anyone. And I really just never even told my parents. I was still, living at home, but I didn't really tell them how much. They saw the boxes coming in, but they kind of just, there wasn't thankfully a lot of pushback there, from them. But I didn't really tell anybody else. Like you said, I just didn't tell anyone else that I was spending tens of thousands of dollars on dolls, on dolls. It sounds stupid saying it, but yeah, it really, I definitely would have gotten pushback. So the only people who knew was like my now wife, girlfriend at the time, and my parents. Yeah. So it's pretty crazy. So you got to ignore them, right? You either have to ignore them, or I've heard this advice: you have to put your head down and not tell them in a way, right? You just got to do it. You just got to do it. And was it Sarah Blakely, I believe, who didn't even tell anybody for like over a year when she had invented and patented Spanx. She just didn't tell anyone because she knew if she started telling other people, she'd get the doubters and haters in her head and she wouldn't be able to do it. So I believe for over a year working on Spanx, nobody or maybe one person knew. And so that might be what you need to do when it comes to selling on Amazon. So number one, you got to let it go. 2, ignore them. And 3, you got to give it time, right? This is not a get rich quick scheme. We've talked about that before. And you've been this for 10 years or going on 10 years now. We've been working on our brand for multiple years before we really saw what we would consider really good success. And so it's like the old adage, every overnight success is 20 years in the making or so, right? So speak to that. What does give it time mean to you when it comes to Amazon selling and most people that are starting?
Yeah, sure. So my son's father-in-law, we were able to hang out a little bit yesterday, and he's watching some of the videos I put out, and he saw, like when I actually just did a recent like 5-part series on the house that we were able to purchase from selling on Amazon, and he says, what people don't understand or realize, Andy, is like you've put in 9 or 10 years worth of work in order to get to the level of success that you're on. And he said, I would imagine that a lot of people see that and they think that can happen overnight. And I said, you know what, Mandy, I said, you're absolutely right. I said, they don't know. And maybe I need to make some videos of this, Nate, that 10 years ago, I was jumping in dumpsters behind grocery stores and other retail outlets to pull out cardboard boxes. Now, those dumpsters a lot of times were dirty and smelly, but I was using those cardboard boxes again to ship product in. And so I was basically bootstrapping. And so there were many examples like that where you basically are getting very dirty and it's gritty work, but your margin is going to be a lot better because you're building up your business. So that is 100% right. You have to give it time. You can't start Amazon and then in a year say, throw up your hands and say, oh man, this is not working. No, you have to keep learning it, right? You have to keep growing. I think someone said once it takes 10,000 hours, right, before you master something. And so you can't keep hopping. And we see that, right, with different people. They start selling Mary Kay and that doesn't work. So then they move to Shackley and that doesn't work. Then they keep trying to, those get quick rich schemes, which never work. You got to stick with something, give it time, because that's how you're going to find success.
Yeah, I think it was Gladwell who, made popular that 10,000 hours. And I mean, at this point, how many hours do we have in Amazon? I don't even know, but it's got to be probably over 10,000 at this point. And so it is a lot of reps that get put in there. And, I think most people aren't able to find success just because they're not willing to give it long enough. Like you get started on one project and you make it halfway, then you start a new project and make it halfway. And if you just completed it, you would really see that success just a little bit further down the road. And I've seen this myself, like the times where I could be a lot further along if I just would have completed some of the projects I started in the past. So by no means are we perfect at this, but we can say, at least thankfully, that we haven't given up on Amazon since we started, and we can see it paying off. And we see it time and time again for all the other friends that we have in the industry who are around, who have been doing this for 5+ years. Obviously it's kind of like, there is that, I forget what that's called, like the success principle, where we're only looking at people who have been successful, but, we don't see we don't see like a big failure rate for people who do these 7 rules, who like take it, like it's pretty much the people who just kind of give up. It's not because they're failing out all the time and going bankrupt. It's like literally just because you don't put in, give it enough time. So let it go, ignore them, give it time. And then number 4, don't compare, which can be difficult when you are starting and you see someone who's further ahead. So maybe just speak to how you've seen that. You've seen, other big sellers as you've been coming up and, just going forward. What does that mean for you, to make sure you're successful?
Yeah, so unfortunately, the culture we live in, it has become so much about comparing all the socials, Insta. They've done psychological studies now, right, where kids are on Instagram and they think everyone else's life is perfect except for theirs. Comparison is the thief of joy. Same when it comes to your business. And we see this, right, in the Amazon seller tribe. Among those 130 that sell $1 million a year, every single one of them, their business model is slightly different, right? And so some may be heavy like retail arbitrage. Some may be heavy online arbitrage. Some may be a wholesale retail and online mix. Their products that they sell are that they're very knowledgeable in. Some may be grocery, right? Others are toys. And so what they've done is they've kind of found their own niche. They're not trying to be like somebody else. So maybe they have a passion, right, for grocery. And that's kind of where they found. And now they're riding that, selling $1 million a year. That's what you have to be about when it comes to business and when it comes to life. So we thankfully have been able to carve out our niche in building a brand. But you and I say this all the time. People will come to us and they have a really good retail arbitrage business, like a couple million, and they try private label. They just don't have that passion there. And so we say, hey, look, stay with what you're good at. What are you passionate about, right? Don't try to be like somebody else. And again, looking at those 130 successful $1 million and above sellers that we have in the Amazon seller tribe who have all come through Tribe 8, what they're really good at is their business is individualized to their situation and to their circumstance. They're not trying to be like somebody else's Amazon business.
Yeah, 100%. And it's going to drive me crazy, that survivorship bias. That's what, when you only look at successful people. But again, I feel like Amazon, if you do these first 4 steps that we just mentioned, the survivorship rate is really high. Number 5 is to stay calm. And I mean, we've seen this a lot over the last 2.5 years, I would say now. I mean, the whole world had to stay, to be successful, had to stay calm since COVID started, and kind of the hecticness of life in general, I feel like from a big picture level. So what does that mean for you selling on Amazon, especially when you were getting started, as you were scaling up? How did staying calm make you more successful?
Yeah, again, I think this goes back to a podcast we did a month ago, where we talked about, like, look, life is going to have highs, life's going to have lows. Your Amazon business is going to have highs and it's going to have lows. Like, I think about one of the lows in our Amazon business was when we had a product that was valued at $50,000 of our cost, and we basically had to trash the entire inventory. So that was like a $50,000 loss, right? Look, that's a lot of money. And if you allow that to affect you emotionally, again, to take you to a low, that's really going to impede the growth and how effective you are on managing your business, right? And so, there is a certain sense where you got to stay as even as you possibly can. And I think everyone listening would agree with this, again, whether it's a personal or a family issue, because we all have different crises. Look, it does not help the situation if a tragedy hits, if all of a sudden everyone starts freaking out. It's kind of like, the professionals, some of the professionals I admire the most are EMTs, right? So every single call they go into, a lot of times it is a very scary and dangerous, situation. But what are they told to do? They just stay calm and even. They're trying to make their patient as calm as possible. They're not freaking out. They're not saying, oh man, look at all the blood. The blood's everywhere. That's not going to help the situation. And the same thing comes with our business. You got to try to stay as even emotionally as possible, because even when those highs hit, right? If you ride that high too much, it can cause you to lose focus. So remain calm.
Yeah, that was me last night with the blood. I'm not a trained EMT, so I didn't have it wasn't that bad, but I need to work on that. So yeah, staying calm is difficult though, when, just as a side note, like, I'm pretty careful with my money from a personal finance level. And so I kind of have to separate out like my personal and the business, because it is hard when we lose $50,000 worth of inventory. Like, I start to think in my head, like, that's like, personally me losing a lot of my, quote unquote net worth all of a sudden, like poof up in flames. Like, I never would be what feels like almost careless. It's not carelessness, but feels like that with my own. But in business, you do need some level of like risk, I guess, tolerance involved. We talk about this a lot, and so I think of my personal finances and business finances quite different. And I think some people make a mistake when they too closely intertwine those, and from like an accounting level, you can get in trouble for this if you're like, oh, my business bank account is like my bank account, so I can just like pay for anything from that, right? You have to obviously have this separation of personal and business, both literally from a expenses level and from a mental, emotional level a little bit, right? So like, otherwise I think you are too all over the place, because you just can be freaking out sometimes when something bad happens. So number 5, stay calm. Number 6, this is kind of going back to what we were just saying there, though. At the end of the day, it's on you. So speak to that, because I think personal responsibility is something that everybody has a little bit different opinion on what level is required. But for entrepreneurship, I mean, that's one thing I like about it. Unlike a big business where it's like, you're part of the corporate mold. I mean, entrepreneurship, you live or die based on you. Speak to that, Andy, what that's meant.
Yeah. So, this is one you and I are big believers in. And I think about this, again, for everything, whether it's your personal life, whether it's your business life. Let's just take, health and exercise from a personal experience, personal perspective. A lot of times folks, they want to be in shape, and that's kind of like, their mantra, I need to eat better. I need to exercise more. And there's nobody else that can do that for that person, right? The only people that, can control like, how fit we are, how healthy we are is us individually. And so it really does all come down to you. Entrepreneurship, selling on Amazon, it is the exact same thing. You cannot blame anybody else, right? Your business, your Amazon sales, at the end of the day, it is 100% on you. And unfortunately, I think that we live in a culture that likes to blame and point fingers and really depend on others. And that's probably a big impediment to why a lot of folks don't become entrepreneurs or don't want to start their own business, is because they would rather depend on others, or they just don't have that level of risk. I think about the pioneers a lot of times, like, look, when they went west, they had arrows that were flying over their heads, right? They knew that when they were going to, marker out their land, they were going to encounter difficulties, but it was 100% right on them. And so they were willing to be pioneers. I think a difference between like a chaplain and a missionary. So a chaplain, they want to keep everything even. That's what their goal is, to keep everything even. A missionary, they're out there exploring. They're out there, conquering, new lands, new worlds. That's the difference. When you're an entrepreneur, it is on you. There's nobody else. And you have to be okay with that. And especially when you begin your business, you just have got to be okay with, what, this is going to succeed or fail, and it's on me. But to me, that's the exciting part.
Yeah. And we've heard a lot of people say, hey, I'm a really hard worker, so I should be able to do this, right? Well, hard work is definitely a prerequisite for being an entrepreneur. I think like if you're not willing to work hard, like you said, you want to depend on someone else, then definitely don't become an entrepreneur. Like it's just not the path for you. Like go work for someone else, because frankly, at the end of the day, it's going to be easier, less responsibility, less headache, right? Doesn't mean if you work hard, you're guaranteed success, because a lot of hard work there's other challenges, right, that come up. You have to have more than just that. But at the end of the day, that is a prerequisite. And I think everybody should just know that. And most everybody knows that, but it's on you end of the day. All right. Number 7 to wrap up these 7 rules would be to smile. So at the end of the day, you have to realize that there is a lot of stuff that's going to go on with those first 6 steps, but you have to be positive, look on, be thankful, be humble, have gratitude, and just realize that just like you can't rely on other people to get done your work for you, as an entrepreneur, you can't rely on other people for your happiness. You got to kind of make that a choice, not just something that's thrusted upon you. So maybe speak that to you and how you live your life with that principle.
Yeah, I mean, life and business is short. And so, at the end of the day, you want to be able to enjoy the fruits of your labor. Again, whether that you're just struggling and maybe again, going to a fitness example, you go to the gym for the first day and you can only do one push-up, right? And then maybe by the end of the week, you can still only do 5. Look, it's okay. What you need to do is enjoy the fact that you're in the journey, that you're in the game, right? You're making yourself better, and you have to be able to smile. Otherwise, why are we doing what we're doing? If it's like extremely stressful or whatever, and you can't at the end of the day smile, then you probably need to recalibrate your life. You may not be doing something right. You may not be on the right mission. So one of my friends' father, for 25 years, his mission in life, he was fighting this highway that was going to come through like real close to where they lived. And his mission in life was just to, prevent this highway from coming through. But you know what? At the end of those 25 years, the highway ended up coming through. And he said, you know what? I feel good about myself because for the last 25 years, I was passionate about this. So even though it's going to come through, I did everything I could. And now I can smile because I knew I put my work in. I think the same is true for entrepreneurship and owning a business.
Yeah. Give it your best. And that's all you can expect of yourself and others and ask for, right? So hopefully one of these or all of these 7 rules or principles for selling online, you could take something from them, apply them to yourselves and find them valuable on your journey for the long term. Hopefully you're looking out for long-term success and not just that quick buck. And you can use these to help you. I mentioned it before, but the Amazon Seller Tribe Coaching Tribe 8 is literally the best way that we know of to become a $1 million seller. If you're not sure where to start, or if you're stuck and you want that cash flowing business that Andy and I have talked about that we're getting back into at some level with arbitrage, this is the place to go. We are going to be students ourselves of this program and the methods that are used. Gary is the best arbitrage coach, possibly in the world, but that we know of in the Amazon selling space. He just has a gift for teaching and making the principles easy to apply for everybody. So check out Tribe 8. You can go to AmazingFreedom.com, sign up to be an insider. You'll see that. Or if you go to AmazonSellerTribe.com, you'll also see Tribe 8 and what's involved there. Andy, always good to get an update on our business, and hopefully week to week as we're doing this show, you'll take something away from what we're trying to do to hit $10 million on Amazon this year and keep growing and keep building out what we think is the best long-term business potential we see. See you guys next week. Thanks, everybody.